This week in history. Yesterday was the 150th anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre in Colorado. And last night I was at an event. My band played a show, and we got to do a big opening prayer around the fire with everybody and do a moment of silence to the Sand Creek Massacre, where 150 years ago the American government committed genocide on nearly 200 Cheyenne and Arapaho people, most of them women and children. This was November 29th, 1864, by the Colorado Territory Militia. Nearly 200 people. Now, according to the Denver Post, beginning at dawn on yesterday, descendants of the survivors gathered on Monument Hill at the Sand Creek Massacre National Historic Site in southeastern Colorado for a private ceremony. After the private ceremony, there were public events, and they were commemorating the genocide and holding a candlelight vigil and a run in their honor. That's a good thing to see. Let me give you some more details on this. And actually, I saw yesterday a New York Times article marking the event, which was pretty powerful. Last week we had the 45th anniversary of the occupation of Alcatraz by the American Indian Movement in 1969, and this week we have the 150th anniversary of a massacre in 1864. And this is the History Channel's version of what happened. On this day in 1864, peaceful Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho Indians are massacred by a band of Colonel John Chivington's Colorado Volunteers at Sand Creek, Colorado. The causes of the Sand Creek Massacre were rooted in a long conflict for control of the Great Plains of eastern Colorado. The Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851 guaranteed ownership of the area north of the Arkansas River to the Nebraska border to the Cheyenne and the Arapaho. However, by the end of the decade, waves of Euro-American miners flooded across the region in search of gold in Colorado's Rocky Mountains, placing extreme pressure on the resources of the arid plains. By 1861, tensions between the new settlers and the Native Americans were rising. On February 8th of that year, a Cheyenne delegation headed by Chief Black Kettle, along with some Arapaho leaders, accepted a new settlement with the federal government. With the Indians ceded most of the land, but secured a 600 square mile reservation and annual payments. The delegation reasoned that continued hostilities would jeopardize their bargaining power. In the decentralized political world of the tribes, Black Kettle and his fellow delegates represented only part of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. Many did not accept this new agreement, called the Treaty of Fort Wise. The new reservation and federal payments proved unable to sustain the tribes. During the Civil War, tensions again rose, and sporadic violence broke out between the Anglos and the Indians. In June 1864, John Evans, governor of the Territory of Colorado, attempted to isolate recalcitrant Indians by inviting, quote, friendly Indians to camp near military forts and receive provisions and protections. He also called for volunteers to fill the military void left when most of the regular troops in Colorado were sent to other areas during the Civil War. In August 1864, Evans met with Chief Black Kettle and several other chiefs to forge a new peace, and all parties were left satisfied. Black Kettle moved his band to Fort Lyon, Colorado, where the commanding officer encouraged him to hunt near Sand Creek. In what can only be considered an act of treachery, Chivington moved his troops to the plains, and on November 29th, they attacked the unsuspecting Indians, scattering men, women, and children, and hunting them down. The casualties reflected the one-sided nature of the fight. 9 of Chivington's men were killed, 148 of Black Kettle's followers were slaughtered, more than half of them were women and children. The Colorado Volunteers returned and killed the wounded, mutilated the bodies, and set fire to the village. The atrocities committed by the soldiers were initially praised, but then condemned as the circumstances of the massacre emerged. Chivington resigned from the military and aborted his budding political career. Black Kettle survived and continued his peace efforts. In 1865, he accepted a new reservation in Indian Territory. So today, whenever you're hearing this, I'm recording this Sunday morning. This is the day after the 150th anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre. Whenever you're hearing this, whenever you're listening to this, take a moment of silence. Remember those people who were slaughtered, not only in this incident, but definitely in this incident, and in plenty of others around the United States and around the world, as people have been oppressed. And as I said earlier, remembering that the American population has become the new Native American, the new indigenous population, the new population that will be extinct soon if it does not learn to resist and to fight back against the oppression that is happening. And as the American Indians found out 500 years ago and found out 40 years ago in the modern resistance, fighting them physically does not seem to work. But by promoting and creating a change that is deeper, that is within our hearts and minds, I believe that we are going to find a way to resist this. John Trudell and many of others have found over a period of time, after resisting and fighting these people directly, that you can't win that way. We've tried to fight them militarily. They have the numbers, they have the guns, but they have the money. But we have to recognize that that is not true power, and that we have power, and so we can fight them. They massacred our ancestors, whether you're native or not. This system, I'm not saying they as in the white people, the Europeans, but there's a force, a dark force that exists. It's deep within the spirit, and for whatever reason, some people seem to be infected or driven by it and encouraged by this dark side of the light. And they are the opposite, the dualistic version of us, the reflection. Without them doing what they are doing, we would not see our goal, our purpose, and our fight for good and for justice. But we can overcome them by living righteously, by living consciously, and creating within our hearts and our minds the world that we want to see, and being consistent in our words, our thoughts, our words, and our actions, and promoting positivity, peace, freedom, self-responsibility, self-reliance, individuality, community, compassion. All these things, we can and will create a better world.